live here. And we're gonna
Welcome.
go right here. And as soon as we see that go live,
Share.
right. Here we are, folks. What time it is?
It is My LoSo Lifestyle with Mary Shep on 216 The Net. We also got live on YouTube at 216 The Net as well. And I am working on sharing my stuff away.
Live on Facebook as well. So we're ready to roll here. While you're sharing your stuff there, why don't you recap a little bit about last week?
So last week we were talking reading labels and shopping. And the biggest things about reading labels and shopping is checking your serving size. So when you read your labels, make sure you check the serving size because it can be really tricky when you think there's 5 servings in a package because there's 5 bratwurst in a package. It might be 15 servings in a package and they're telling you to eat a third of a bratwurst. So pay close attention to what you're eating and also read the whole label. A lot of times people have a tendency to look at the calorie count or the sugar count or the carb count or the sodium count just because that's what they're looking for. When you really should read the whole label because there's a lot of information in there and you don't want to be fooled by something.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes into it. So this week, canning, freezing, and if we get to it, depending on how chatty I am,
You?
yeah, I know.
Oh,
I know. It's
heavens
a shocker.
no. Yeah.
Tracking your food. So, but canning, let's start with canning. I am going to announce this right off the bat. First disclaimer, I am not a professional. I am not some 50 years seasoned veteran of canning. So I know a little bit, but I do know a lot about food and I do a lot of research. There's a group called Rebel Canners. And it's fantastic. There's different facets of that group for each state. There's national ones, and it has hundreds. I mean, it's some of the largest Facebook groups are the Rebel Canners and their subgroups.
Wow.
There's a lot of controversy about canning because, especially when it comes to salt. And I actually got into a very heated debate with a lady that is very prominent in a lot of our local farmers markets. So if you go to pretty much any farmers market within driving distance of where we're at, you will find her. And she argued with me very dramatically that you have to have salt. Otherwise you will die. You will get botched. She says, and I quote, "Have you ever heard of botulism?"
Oh. No, what is this strange thing you speak of?
No, I've never heard of food poisoning before in my life. Yes,
I just got here from the year 1000.
So surprisingly, it was funny. I was talking about it the other day at work, and one of the younger kids actually had said, "Well, I don't. What is botulism?" So thankfully it's not that common these days. But she was very adamant. So there is a lot of different controversies over canning and how you can, and those kinds of things.
So explain canning real quick for people who have no idea, because like I heard of canning when I was little,
Right.
50 years ago, when my grandmother or my great-grandmother would say, "Oh, it's time to get our canning done."
Mm-hmm.
And
the season for it, your growth seasons, depending on tomatoes or potatoes or corn, whatever. Yeah. So canning is just a method of preserving food in processed and sealed and airtight containers, jars, cans, the actual tin cans, like you see a tin can on the shelf. Those are usually commercial canning. Hey, Dad, love you too.
Hey, it's awesome when parents
I know
watch, right?
it's funny because someone had asked me once if I have to be somebody else on my show because my dad tunes in every week, and I don't have to be anybody else. My dad knows that I swear. He knows that I fly off the cuff. He knows he's my dad. He knows all that crap. So it's nice. I don't have to sit here and be politically correct or anything. I have to be politically correct because I'm respectful of my people that listen to me, but not because my dad's watching. He knows who I am.
Yeah. Cool.
But no, canning is a method of preserving food, and there's a million different kinds of canning. So most commonly people see things in glass jars, like the ball jars, which are most popular. And then obviously tin cans, which if you're canning in tin cans at home, you are a professional. It is not an easy process. It is meant to be commercially done, but there are still people who can do it, at home. But wow. I have no clue, not even going to touch it because it's not something I've
never seen that. And I always wondered why it was called canning because I never saw anything other than, the stuff that they would do that with. And it's all in jars. Why isn't it called jarring?
Well, it's funny because when you're talking about canning in the grammatical way to talk about it is annoying as hell. Can I can? Can you can? Can you can beans? Can you can? And it's like you just feel like you're writing can so many times when you're talking about canning food. But it is actually a method of preserving foods and provides a shelf stable, typically ranging from 1 to 5 years.
Wow.
Now, and that's where the controversy a lot of the time starts in the canning groups, because there's Amish canning and generational canning where, grandmothers and grandfathers have taught their children these methods of canning. And in times of famine and hardship, you've got canned goods that last decades. Now, scientifically speaking, the nutritional value and the flavor and sometimes even the odor will degrade over time. It's just no matter what you do. I mean, look at mummies that they preserve in Egypt. Over time, they are really incredibly preserved, but they still degrade over time. You cannot make something timeless. There was a little stat that I had pulled up that a freeze-dried canned product can last as long as 30 years, like dried lentils or something that's freeze-dried and canned. In 1974, samples of canned food from a wreck of the Bertrand, a steamboat that sank in the Missouri River in 1865, tested by the National Food Processors Association. Although the appearance, smell, and vitamin content had deteriorated, there was no trace of microbial growth in a 109-year-old. It was still perfectly safe and edible to eat.
Wow, you got to be brave to eat a 109-year-old.
Right. Well, that's what's funny is you see like people in the canning world. They get so excited, someone passes away. They're not excited about the passing away, but someone passes away and they inherit all their canned goods out of their canned pantry. And there's stuff in there that, you dust it off and it's a decade old. I'm going, I'm not eating that.
Yeah.
I have stuff that's 6 months old and it's pickles and I'm still going, I know this is safe, but
well, I grew up learning to do the smell test. If something did not smell dead, then it was okay to eat. That was the rule.
So now something that I learned in my quest to learn how to can food, and I'm still a novice at that, but I do can quite a bit of stuff, was when you have the canning jars and it's got the circle ring that holds the tin lid on. People who can, a lot of times, once it's sealed and preserved and ready to put on a shelf in your pantry for storage, they take that ring off and it's just the sealed top plate that's on top of the can. The reason for that is if for some reason you didn't do it properly, or the seal didn't hit properly, or there was a bacteria in there that gets a chance to grow over time in 6 months, if there is a bacteria buildup and it creates a gas, it'll pop that lid off.
Huh.
So if you open your pantry and you smell something, it's because one of those lids popped. You can take the one that's bad, but if it's sealed and that ring is holding that on there, you don't know until you actually pop it open and open it, or it can just explode and shatter. So a lot of canners, and I've actually started doing that myself, where once it's sealed, it's sealed. You can tip it upside down. It's sealed.
See, I remember my grandmother, my dad's mom, doing like she was always boiling the wax, and then the wax would go on the top before she would seal it up. It was like a white, pasty looking.
And that's old school, because obviously the metal lids are expensive and wax is much, much cheaper. So it's the same thing. There's many different ways to seal a jar, but it's the same process. The wax just fills all of the nooks and crannies and seals that top lid. So whether it's soup or anything else, if you've got a flat surface on top, you can, and that's why a lot of times canned goods, instead of dry canning, they're canned with a liquid so that wax sits on top of the liquid and it seals it. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Can't believe that 109-year-old food
I know.
was fine to eat. I wonder who ate it. I wonder if somebody, oh, it's safe to eat. You try it. No,
you know that
try
in
it.
that lab, once those results came back, there had to have been somebody like, dude, I dare you.
Yeah.
Take a bite. Take a bite.
Somebody was standing there with a Ritz.
Yeah. They're Ritz crackers. Yeah. Hey, who wants 100-year-old lentils?
Yeah.
Oh, that's too funny. That's too funny. So the reason why I got in an argument with the lady at the farmer's market was because of the question that comes up a lot with canning is salt necessary, or is salt or sugar necessary for canning? And the answer is not always. Salt really doesn't have a whole lot to do, or sugar, with the preservation of food. That being said, if it's a salt preserved food, like something that is fermented or pickled, so you can do sweet pickles without salt. They don't need salt. But if you're actually doing a fermentation process where you have a crock with cucumbers and salt, or like sauerkraut, where it's not a heating process, it's not a cooking process or refrigerator process. Same with like soy sauces and fermented bean pastes. You have a crock, and you put cabbage, and you put salt, and you put cabbage, and you put salt, and you set it outside, and it's a controlled fermentation. Same with pickles. A true dill pickle is cucumbers, salt, vinegar, and dill, and garlic and seasoning, and pickles and cucumbers, salt, dill. So you set it in a crock and let it ferment for a month. So it goes to the point of spoilage, and then it goes past the point of spoilage and goes back into a controlled fermentation, and the good bacteria takes over the bad, and it becomes a fermented product. So those kinds of things, you 100% need the salt. You can reduce it to a certain point, but you cannot get rid of it. You can make something that's similar. So if you want a sauerkraut or a dill pickle, you can make a refrigerator version of that. So it's more of a cooking of a brine or a seasoning process, and then dumping it over, or blanching your cabbage or your pickles, and then putting them in the refrigerator. So the cold stops any bacteria from forming, but it's not something that you're going to keep for 10 years. That's that's why some pickles are refrigerated and some pickles are shelf stable.
Okay.
And the refrigerated pickles, like the Clausens or whatever, are always crunchier.
Yeah.
That's why they are not cooked.
Okay.
So if you actually can them, there's a heat process in canning, and it cooks it. So it changes, no matter what you say, when you add heat or cold, it changes the texture of the food, which is why cold pickles are crispier than canned pickles that you see on the shelf that are good for a decade.
All right.
But salt and sugar, and same with sugar, because you watch sugar. So when you get jams and jellies and stuff like that, you don't need the sugar to can stuff. It's just both salt and sugar. They're just flavor components unless it's a fermented product.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't, but then again, I've never known anything about canning other than my grandmother used to do it.
I'm educating you.
Yeah, you are. So now here you're talking about getting started in canning.
Mm-hmm.
What does that? I mean, it sounds like a lot of work, actually.
So it is, and it can be daunting. It's it's like anything else when you start something new. When you learn how to cook, or you learn how to make a sauce, or you have to make a diet change, like going low sugar or low sodium. So I started with pickles just because I was desperate for pickles, because I love pickles.
Okay.
And I quickly learned that with dill pickles, you can make a vinegar pickle taste pretty good. But the same as we've talked about, where, if you like salt on your tomato, there's not a whole lot you're going to do to substitute salt for tomato. So you can make a really good vinegar dill pickle, or a vinegar hot sauce, or any of those things. It's just not the same. So can you have something that's really good? Absolutely. Something that's pretty damn close? Absolutely. Something that is zero salt, that's a true dill pickle? Not a chance. But
those that you made that you brought in here,
those were sweet and sour butter pickles.
Oh,
so they're the bread and butter pickles. So they were
those
good. Are easier to make.
They to me, those almost had a little bit more of a coleslaw type flavor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I freaking love coleslaw.
That's the sugar in there.
They were good. They were good.
Yeah. So getting started, I started with the pickle just because I wanted a pickle. And I quickly discovered that it was going to be a lot more trial and error to make a dill pickle. So I switched to the refrigerator pickles, and I made those relatively quickly. Now, the when I actually stepped into canning and bought my first canner, and I bought a good All-American, it's a true, you know, bolt it down pressure cooker. And there is a difference between pressure cookers and pressure canners. Some can do both. I know we're in a world of everybody loving the Instant Pots, which is like a new age crock pot. You can do everything in it.
Yeah.
There are some canners that can do both, but my personal preference is use one for one and the other for the other. Don't intermingle the two. And I know a lot of people in the canning world agree. You're just, I don't know. There's something about cooking things under high pressure. I want something that's dedicated for that purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because me and my husband testing out this thing for the first time ever is terrifying. We ran out of water the first time, so it went bone dry. So the thing sounded like it was going to explode. It was a lot of trial and error. So I started my first actual batch was a batch of jams, because jams are relatively easy to start with as far as canning is concerned. You cook down.
If that had exploded.
Oh man! Oh, there's some stories.
Had jam everywhere.
I'm sure you could YouTube it. There's some horror stories of canning, and you know, people forgot, or the thing exploded and took out their heat vent on top of their
I remember
stove.
when I was young, my mom had one of those great big the steel pressure cookers that you filled it up with whatever you were cooking, and then you actually put it on, you locked it down, locked it over. There was a little thing that came up on the handle to keep that in place. Then there was this little bobby thing on top that would just be like
right. The weight. Mm-hmm.
And but that exploded one time.
Yeah,
and
that's exactly what I have.
I think she was doing a chicken or something, but it was everywhere.
Yeah,
just
it's like a cannon.
Yeah, it looked like somebody took a shotgun and just boom, shot a chicken and splattered it all over our kitchen.
That's so awful. That's hilarious, but awful.
It was gross because we didn't get. It took us a while to find it all, and it started to kind of So
that's so gross.
Yeah, but that was a long time ago.
So there is one thing that is a very hot topic of debate, and for years we left Chris of Hacking Salt, who had passed away. I talked about his group quite a bit. He was the king at debating this, and we've all had to kind of pick up and take in his footstep anytime someone brings it up, and that is rinsing salt off of canned goods. So if you buy, or if you go low sodium today and you look in your pantry and you go to get rid of everything and you find out that your green beans and your corn and everything is salted, and the common consensus is, well, I can just rinse it. All the salt's in the liquid. That is not true. The pressure cooking in the canning process, and a lot of times, like we've talked about chicken and stuff, where it's already brined. So it's a process by which it infuses, or through an osmosis, where it infuses the salt and the spices into the product itself. So yes, a lot of it is in the liquid, but in reality, when you eat a can of green beans or something, you usually strain the liquid off, or you don't eat the liquid, you eat the beans. At least I don't, even if I dump it in the bowl with all of the liquid, I don't eat it's not like I'm eating it with a spoon to eat the liquid.
Well, I mean, if I'm having baked beans or pork and beans.
Well, that's usually in more of a sauce.
Yeah, but yeah, so you don't.
But even rinsing it off. So I pulled up some studies, and Chris did the same thing. He did a lot of research, and the consensus through all of the studies, and it sucks because while researching this, I wanted to research it again, just because even though I had the knowledge, I wanted to find out the exact numbers from one of the studies that I had seen that was done. But in my research this morning, site after site after site after site, mom and pop's healthy eating website, and mom and pop this, or Mary this, or Joe Schmo cooking that, says, yeah, you can do it. You can do heating, you can rinse your food and it will reduce the sodium. The truth of the matter is the fact is, yes, it does, but not in such an amount that's good or reliable. So the study actually did was that the results from Beltsville Human Nutrition Research Center that was published on the actual USDA website is that draining and rinsing of canned vegetables can reduce the sodium content from 9 to 23%.
Okay.
That's a huge variable.
Yeah.
So there's a variable as it is in food. When you look at something, it says it's 100 milligrams of sodium. That's on average. Same with sugar, same with everything else. That's an average across a base that they've tested, says that on average out of 500 products, that it's consistently at this point that we put it out. So when you can't even get really an average and it's 9 to 23%, and it could be higher or lower, that's just the average. So some of these, so like peas, the solids and the liquids was 210 to 328 on average milligrams. Drained was 211 to 308. So it's still within, and once you actually rinsed the product, it went down to 207 to 275. So you really, I mean, if you started with a can of goods that was up on the high end of 300 and you rinsed it and it came down to 200, you're in good. But how do you know that at home?
There's no way to measure that.
Right. So you're, and that's where I say, like, when you be honest with yourself, it's not that you're lying to yourself. You're just choosing to believe one side of the spectrum more than the other because of what you want to eat. So, it's like when you use 8 million pats of butter to put on your toast, you're telling yourself it's one serving.
Well, yeah,
but
because it's just one piece of toast.
Right. And it's not.
But, even though you just butter.
Right. So in my opinion, if worst case, and that's what you have, and money's tight, you don't have, I didn't want to throw away everything. I gifted most of my stuff to other people, but you're running a risk, especially if you're on a looser diet restriction, then it's okay. But if you're one of those people that's on a really tight restriction, or you're newly diagnosed, you're new to this, you're running the risk of fooling yourself into thinking that you've rinsed something off, so now it's safe to eat, when you're tripling your sodium intake, or whatever else that you're trying to get rid of, and you're opening yourself up for a whole world of hurt. So you're better off getting stuff that's the correct stuff to consume, within the restrictions that you're allowed, versus trying to modify something else unless you have no other option. Obviously not everybody can afford to throw their food out and go start new.
Well, yeah.
But so if that's all you have is to rinse it off and mitigate your risks, then absolutely. But don't fool yourself into thinking that you're making something, naturally, like a green bean has, 10 milligrams of sodium. And by rinsing it off, you're suddenly making a 300 milligram product down to 10 milligrams of sodium. That's just not how it works.
No.
So, but when it comes to canning, there's so much that can be canned, and there's other ways to infuse flavor. So like with potatoes, if you can them with garlic or seasonings, instead of salting it, now you've infused those with different flavors. Same with meats and other vegetables and berries. So by learning to modify canning recipes, you can do a whole lot. And I went out and utilized my local library and got just about every possible book I could get, both on low sodium recipes, the whole 9 yards, liver disease, canning, everything you can think of. But a good book to start with, what is it called? The Complete Guide to Home Canning. I think it's actually from the USDA.
Huh.
But it's not the greatest book, but it's a good place to start. It's a simple book.
It's simple. It's issued by a government agency.
There's also an Amish canning book, which is fabulous, because Amish people know how to cook. They know how to make stuff. I mean, their pies, their cheese is fantastic. There used to be an Amish post out by our house up in Michigan, and we'd go up there and get homemade ice cream. Oh my gosh, that stuff. Or the Colby Jack cheese. It was to die for. The funny thing is because they don't really need money, they had an Amish trading post. So it really was a trading post. They would trade mostly for gasoline and booze. So you'd see people coming up with like cases of alcohol. I mean, they could make their own alcohol, but
I didn't think that they were into the
I don't know.
I mean,
the one out there, maybe they were selling it. I don't know.
That's because there's Amish and then there's another group.
The Mormons or something.
The Mennonites.
That's the one. I think the Mennonites are the ones that don't drink. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know about that. But
yeah, I don't know about that either, obviously. But
I just know that they know how to cook.
Awesome. So now we got freezing. I love it, you say.
Yes, I do. Mostly because it's not as time intensive as canning can be. Because with canning, you've got to make sure that your jars are sanitary, your lids are sanitary, the rings are sanitary, your cooking vessels are sanitary. And you don't need to have a clean room. So it sounds worse than it is. But
can you just run that stuff through the dishwasher and be okay?
A lot of people do. It's another point of contention. Some people don't like that. Some people do. Some people say it's the only way to get it hot enough, and that's fantastic. But yeah,
you can't boil a rubber ring, can you?
Well, they're not. A lot of them, the seal inside, it's made for the high temperatures.
Okay.
So you can.
Oh, all right.
But the glasses themselves and the rings themselves, you don't have to boil them for long periods of time. It's just a short, quick, and then you set them aside so that you can can everything. But you need space to do that.
Yeah.
And even with a large canner, it's funny because you'll see some of these pictures in these canning groups, and someone's like, yeah, so this was my canning for today, and they show a picture of it, and it's like 6 shelving units of 300 cans of crap. I'm like, what the? So I posted my picture. I made 7 jars of jelly.
Hey, so yeah, you got plenty for
4 jars
sandwiches.
of pickles, and then I'm like, I remember one of the first posts I ever did. I think it was four big jars of pickles. And the next post was a lady who just got done canning 1/4 of her garden. Now she's like a farmer. She's a full-blown homesteader. So it's not like my garden with 2 tomato plants. She's got like 7 rows of tomato plants.
Wow.
So it was literally like 162 jars done today. I was like, all right, thanks. I got that. Thanks for posting that right after my little 4 jars.
But that was her, and the other is you. So you know it's all right. It's not a competition.
It was pretty fun. But I do, because there's so much more work gone into canning. I do like to freeze a lot. So when it's just me and my husband, freezing is fantastic because when you freeze in portions. So by freezing in single portions, it cuts down on the thaw time because it's smaller amounts.
All right.
It makes portion control easier, and it makes serving in numbers easier. Because if it's a single serving and it's just me and you, I just grab 2.
Okay.
Or 3 for a little extra.
All right.
But if it's me and my husband and then you come over, and now it's easy for me to
then you just go get 3, and then and you're good to go. You're done.
Whether it's a main or a side, by freezing in those portions, you allow yourself that room and the ease of doing that. And like I said, with the thaw time, if you have 4 servings, then you got to free.
You don't have to can that separately, then, right? I mean, how do you can a serving? You don't.
Well, you can't with serving sizes. You can't really can in servings. Canning, you can can. You have to can in what the vessel is. But freezing, you can.
You're
freeze
just freezing something completely. This is completely entirely separate and apart from canning.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Okay, so you made your
Right.
stuff, whatever it is, and now you're just going to portion it out.
Correct.
However you're going to freeze it, you put that in your stuff, and then you just stick it in the freezer, and you're done.
Right.
So,
right.
all
So
right.
yeah, when you, especially because I freeze in the freezer zip bags.
Okay.
If I don't have a fancy, what are they called? Vacuum sealer.
Okay.
I have a vacuum sealer, but mine doesn't do liquid. So like I can vacuum seal a steak.
Huh.
But if it's got a liquid in it, the vacuum, there's ones that are nice enough that stop the liquid from coming out. Mine doesn't do that. Mine only sucks out air. And if I have liquid in there, it's going to suck the liquid out too.
Yeah, it's going to suck it out. So, yeah.
So you can get fancy ones that can do both.
Huh.
So you can do the vacuum sealing. Me, because we eat it so quickly, I just do everything in Ziploc baggies in single portions. Good morning, Singapore.
Good morning,
I'm
Gary.
global. I love that. You know what's funny is you can look at the analytics on your Facebook page and all that stuff. And apparently I have a big following in the Philippines.
Cool.
I was like, well, I don't know where that came from, but
here at 21.6 The Net, we've got, of course, Gary, who's a major fan. He tunes in a lot.
Yeah.
But we actually do have a following in the Philippines, actually Germany, surprisingly.
That's funny.
Enough.
I love German
food. So it's, even though we're our biggest audience is, of course, here in the Chicagoland, Milwaukee area, because that's where we are.
Right.
But it's wild to take a look at that and see what's going on. And as a matter of fact, we're right here at the bottom of the hour. So we're going to take a little quick break here and mention just a tiny handful of the people that make what we do possible, our partners here at 216 The Net. You know, we love y'all. Y'all are just absolutely fantastic. We're very, very thankful. And of course, we've got people like Natural Therapy Wellness Center, 815-385-8190. You can find them online at mchenrymassage.com. A massage can be a great way to pamper yourself. It can also help alleviate or sometimes even cure ailments and stress you deal with on a day-to-day basis. You can contact them today to speak to one of their certified massage therapists. Natural Therapy Wellness Center, 815-385-8190, mchenrymassage.com. And of course, you have awesome folks like the people over at Prime Media Consulting, LLC, 847-752-0018. primemediaconsulting.com. If you ever wondered why your website's not showing up online where you want it to be, and you want to make sure that you are found when someone is searching for your kind of business, give Prime Media a call. They help small business owners optimize their exposure on major search engines, and that helps them transform their businesses. Give them a call today, 847-752-0018, or reach out to them at primemediaconsulting.com. And of course, you're listening to My LoSo Lifestyle with Mary Shep right here on 216 The Net, 216thenet.com. You can go to the website, click listen live. You can jump in, of course, on our Facebook live stream like we see all of you doing, or the live stream over at YouTube. Hello, YouTube folks as well. And then you can also just download the app, 21.6 The Net. Find it on your favorite app store. Works on any device. It's free. No in-app purchases. We just want you to listen and have a good time. So actually, Mary, why don't we just jump right back in here?
Sure. Hey, Jim. Of course, Jim's here this week when I was talking about cast iron and heating up your appetizers in cast iron the other week.
Yeah, you were.
I love it. I love my cast iron. So freezing, that, like I said, if you freeze in portions, and the first thing that I discovered that it's funny because originally I was reading that you can't freeze potatoes. They don't freeze well because there are a lot of water in them, and they turn out mealy and gross, and you cook them and they freeze and they still turn out gross. However, mashed potatoes freeze fantastically. So I freeze mashed potatoes all the time. And this is where we're talking about portion size and stuff. When you freeze it in a single portion, by the time I get it out of the freezer and get a dish to put it in, it's already half thawed. And then throw it in the microwave. And my husband and I have mashed potatoes inside of a couple minutes, whether I heat it up on the stove or heat it up in the microwave. Either way, it's fantastic.
Because you're good to go like right away.
Right. So freezing stuff in single portions has been a huge help because we don't have kids. We don't have a big family. So I'm sure that anybody that has two people can relate that they don't make things in 2-person servings. You buy chicken, there's 4 chicken breasts. Yeah. You buy hamburger patties, there's 4 hamburger patties. And even with freezing, if you're going to buy in bulk, which I do at, the box stores, Sam's Club, Costco, again, you gotta suck the air out. So if they give you something that's just wrapped in cellophane, you need to repackage it if you're going to freeze it for a little while.
Yeah.
You can buy it packaged for freezing, but it's more expensive. So a couple of tips. So when you're freezing stuff, blanching. So blanching is just a quick heat and cool. So like zucchini is a prime candidate for blanching. A lot of fruits and vegetables have to be blanched before you freeze them for them to freeze properly. So zucchini, when you cut it up, like okra, it gets slimy.
Yeah.
And that slime doesn't freeze well, and then everything sticks together in a big clump, and it just then you have a big giant brick of zucchini in your freezer, which isn't really appetizing. So if you blanch it quickly, and so essentially you throw it in boiling water for 15, 30 seconds.
Oh, real quick. Quick. Okay.
Maybe a minute tops. You're not wanting to cook it. You blanch it super hot. It preserves the color. It preserves the texture. And then you shock it in a bath of ice water. And zucchini, when you chop it in chunks, you blanch it, shock it in ice water, and you lay it flat on like a cookie sheet to freeze it. So it takes up a lot of your space initially to freeze. But you put that whole cookie sheet in your freezer. Once it's actually frozen, then I just use a spatula, scoop it all up, throw it in a Ziploc baggie, and now it's individually frozen chunks of zucchini.
Huh.
versus a giant block. It's the same with fruit. When you go to freeze fruit and it turns into a big giant block of mush.
I mean, you need a pretty big freezer for that, though, right? For putting a cookie sheet in one.
Not necessarily. My cookie sheet. I mean, I got a standard. Actually, I have a small fridge because we had to buy a special one because our spot is unique size.
Yeah.
So it's really narrow and tall, kind of like an apartment freezer.
Huh.
And it's still just a standard. I mean, it doesn't have to be a commercial kitchen sheet tray that's giant. It's just a regular cookie sheet.
Because we have cookie sheets that are like, I mean, they're like,
yeah, they'll fit.
I mean, I usually put an entire pound of bacon on one of those, and it fills.
Surprisingly, most
up.
of them will fit in your freezer.
So, I've never tried to put one in the freezer either.
Say, right. But yeah, so things like that, when you come to like zucchini or fresh fruit and stuff like that, if you freeze it, or even you don't even have to get it 100% frozen, but just to the point where it's hard enough to throw in a Ziploc baggie.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. So there are quite a few things that just benefit better from blanching first versus, oh, hey, Lisa. Hey, Nicole.
That's pretty cool. People popping in here on the Facebook live stream. We've had people popping in and out all morning here so far.
So blanching obviously for certain fruits and vegetables is extremely beneficial. And then obviously airtight. So when you freeze stuff, the less air, the less chance you have a freezer burn. And like I said, when you buy stuff at the big box store, so if you buy a bunch of hamburger meat or something of that nature, when you repackage it and freeze it, as long as you suck more of that air out, or if like I did, I got a cheapo vacuum sealer for hamburger meat and steaks and stuff like that, and chicken, so that I can freeze in single portions so that it's faster to thaw. And then I know I don't have to measure anything or do anything. I know it's an individual serving size every time. And always, 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 always label and date your stuff. I find myself being horrible at that at times. So it's not so much a mystery food because, you pull something out, it's steak or mashed potatoes. But occasionally with the pasta sauces and the red sauces, you're playing so is this a bolognese? Is it a pasta? Is it a chili? Is it a pizza sauce?
Yeah, because it's red. There'd be nothing worse than pulling that out.
Right.
And whipping up some spaghetti.
Thought it was pizza sauce and it's cocktail sauce.
You pour yeah. Oh, let's have pizza. Oh, here's some sauce. Oh, it's new. It's a shrimp pizza.
The bigger thing is to obviously because of the date. Freezing is not like canning. You can't get a year, 2, 3, 10 years out of frozen food. It's just not going to happen. So always label and date your food. The other question a lot of people ask me is what do I freeze? I freeze anything I can. The only thing I haven't tried to freeze yet is eggs. So a lot of people say to freeze eggs in an ice cube tray, which makes sense.
Like
crack an egg, put a raw egg
in
in an ice cube tray and freeze it. And for all intents and purposes, everything I see, you can do that. I personally have never done that. Mostly because I don't. The most common way I use eggs,
mostly because it's weird.
So there's a lot. There's a lot of things that are weird.
I'm gonna freeze eggs. I would think you would cook it first.
See, that's common misconception because cooked eggs do not freeze well. Egg whites do not. Cooked egg whites don't. It's the same reason you can't freeze hard-boiled eggs. The cooked egg whites just don't do well frozen. There's something about it texturally changes and it makes it extremely off-putting. So it's not something that you want to freeze. But I tend to freeze. I do my mashed potatoes.
Yeah. You talked about that before. You really love freezing the potatoes.
I'm a potato girl. I like anything potatoes. I love mashed potatoes. I love fried potatoes, home fried. We went to breakfast the other day, and it's been years since we went to Around the Clock.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it's been decades since I've been there. And our networking group, we go after our meeting or whatever, and they had home fries, like actual sliced potatoes fried. Instead of like the shredded
stuff.
crap.
Yeah.
Oh man, I was a happy little pig. I about licked my plate.
We used to go when we lived in Crystal Lake. We used to go there. I haven't been there in a long time.
We used to go all the time when we were young. My husband and I and all our friends. They're in Wags. Yeah, we loved Wags. Mostly because it was convenient and right there. But It's no longer the mom and pops places are few and far between these days, unfortunately.
Oh, well.
But
we digress. Yeah.
So what else is it that I do? My pizza sauce, that freezes well. My meatballs. Another one that a lot of people don't think of is because it's weird. Yeah. Taco meat. If you freeze taco meat or fajita meat, whether it's steak or chicken or otherwise,
yeah,
that is the best, because if you're making a breakfast burrito and you take out a little single serving of taco meat and have eggs and taco meat on a little breakfast burrito.
Yeah, I've never, ever eaten a breakfast burrito.
What is wrong with you?
Burritos aren't for breakfast.
Yeah, they are.
Nah.
Yeah.
Nah.
Oh yeah.
Nah.
I'm gonna change your ways. I'm gonna change your ways.
Nah.
I'm gonna have you eating Brussels sprouts.
No, that'll never happen. No.
Brussels sprouts and breakfast burritos before we're done.
Nah.
That's fine.
I'm good. There are just certain things that will just never go back in my mouth.
Right. So the other one is pre-seasoned chicken. So obviously you can freeze chicken, but when you have, especially if you have kids, so if you you can tell I'm Irish. If you pre-season chicken, the herbs, spices, whatever, I like you can buy citrus powder. So if you take chipotle and a little bit of citrus powder, and some pepper, and season it up, and then chop it in chunks. So whether it's chicken tenderloins, so you get a couple of those in individual servings, or actually chop chicken up in small chunks and freeze it that way into single portions.
You cook it first?
You can do either. So if you cook it first, obviously it cuts down on time significantly, but you don't have to. So it depends on what I'm doing and how much I bought and what's going on at the time. But if you pre-season it and then it's raw, if you're going into something if you're making a full dish of something, like the casseroles and things that I make in the big thingies that I always call them.
Yeah.
That's nice because you can impart more flavor into it because it's raw. You can throw it right into the pan. It's going to be cooking throughout the process, and it's not that big of a deal. You can straight from the freezer because there's just tiny little chunks. You don't need to thaw it. If you have kids, especially if you can pre-cook it and pre-cook seasoned tenderloins or chunks of chicken, your kids are hungry. All you got to do is pull one of those out, season it up. Yeah. And if you leave chicken tenderloins seasoned raw and freeze them, then the same thing. You can make like your own, essentially a chicken finger of sorts.
Okay.
Because you break it out and thaw it out, just coat it in some flour and fry it up, or bake it in the oven, or the air fryers, all those different things that they have now. They got so many gadgets. I used to be a gadget queen, but I don't have any counter space.
We don't have that. Our kitchen is like that galley style. It's like long and narrow.
Same.
And so we have like a really friggin' long, like a long single counter with a big sink in the middle of it.
Same.
And it's like a really deep.
I wish I had a big farmer sink.
But we've got my wife uses a crock pot like almost daily because that's how she makes the dog food.
Sure.
And then she uses the air fryer. That I will say, I was very skeptical about the whole air fryer thing, but
I'm almost about ready to buy one.
Let me tell you about the tots.
I miss tater
love tater tots. But yeah, you can't do the salted ones. You just go buy
right.
at Walmart
I'd have to
or
make
whatever.
my own.
But I love fried tater tots. That's one of my most favorite things.
See, now I'm gonna have to. My husband's gonna yell at me. I'm gonna have to go buy an air fryer.
I mean, she does actually. She'll cut up potatoes and make their own fried potatoes in there. She's fried. I mean, it actually is crispy stuff when it comes out.
Right. And that's what I mean, everybody always says. So I'm like, I might just have to bite the bullet.
Actually is good.
Yeah, but that's one of the favorite things that I learned is by freezing those things in individual servings. It was super easy to take a couple packages of chicken out, throw it on a cookie sheet, throw it in the oven. And because they're so thin and tiny, it's instant, essentially like chicken fingers or anything else that you can just throw on some pasta. So it makes for a quick meal. And the same with the taco meat, because you can add it to so many different things. So you don't have to just make tacos. But when you add it to a casserole or, like I said, the breakfast burritos or anything else, or just a plain old taco, it's super easy to thaw that out and in 2 seconds have a lunch or dinner or something like that. So you don't have to start from scratch. So anytime I do stuff, I tend to make a bigger batch and cook a few pounds at a time, even though it's just me and my husband, so I can freeze the rest.
Yeah. Right.
Same with soups and chilies.
Yeah, I love chili.
And pasta sauces and my pizza sauces, and there's a whole plethora of things that you can freeze.
Now, in addition to eggs, you've got a list here of, are there things that can't be frozen? And you said, yeah, eggs in the shell, and
right.
And creams do not do well frozen. But you've got, like in the cooked egg whites. Then you got cucumber and a few other things here.
So the biggest.
How does cucumber not freeze?
Water.
Is it turned into like an ice cube or something?
Kinda. I mean, well, the problem is you forget. You think that when everything freezes, it shrinks, which is true, except for water. Water expands. So you have to leave, when you're freezing stuff, you have to leave room for it to expand. Thankfully, in zip bags and stuff like that, the plastic usually has enough give in it that you don't have to worry a whole lot about it. But if you are actually freezing in some kind of Tupperware or sealed dish of some sort, you have to remember that water expands, which is why you can't freeze eggs in the shell. Egg whites, just the chemical nature construction of them, they just don't freeze well. But in the shell, because the egg has got so much liquid, it will literally expand and just shatter the shell.
So what if you just throw a cucumber in the freezer?
So because of the water content of the cucumber, the freeze expands all of the structure of essentially tearing the cucumber out from the inside out. So then when you go thaw it and it thaws all that ice, it turns into mush.
Yeah. Okay.
So you're essentially tearing the interstructural fiber of the product itself. It's the same reason potatoes don't freeze well. So things that are water, that's why a lot of vegetables benefit from blanching.
Okay.
Because that quick cook already changes the structure of the proteins in the product, which helps it hold up better for freezing. But
you say even hard-boiled eggs don't freeze.
It's because of the white.
No.
So if you're going to freeze eggs, you got to freeze it out of the shell, which is why people do it in ice cubes. Out of the
shell, raw, and in
because that's the
cubes,
best vessel to freeze them in, because it's perfect little sizes to hold a perfect size egg. So that, I mean, it's genius who's ever thought about it, but it still is kind of weird to put eggs in ice cream.
I never. We got a lot of people commenting over here on the Facebook Live.
We're not paying attention. We're too busy chatting.
We're talking.
Air fryers are the best. I'm just gonna have to get an air fryer. And, I don't know where the heck I'm gonna put stuff.
Gary, he's got 2 units at home for cooking.
Wow, you got 2 air fryers?
And good for you.
No kidding.
And then what does that say? Can you read that there?
Cucumbers are suitable to only be placed in cold water in the fridge, but not in the freezer. Yes, you are 100% correct. And it's also really good if you do sliced cucumbers in vinegar water and onions. That's fantastic. Or if you add hot peppers to it, that's really good too. It's like a hot pepper cucumber salad.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah. Good stuff.
I like hot peppers. I like spicy stuff.
I got to make you some cowboy jelly.
That sounds really weird.
It's essentially like a relish, but instead of pickles, it's hot peppers.
Huh. All right. I like hot. I like hot and spicy. I don't do near as much as I used to, but man, I love hot, spicy food. I really, really do.
So now when it comes to freezing stuff, the big question is, how do you fit it in your freezer? So I'll have to see if I can dig up a picture of it and post it on my page. I have these plastic drinking cups from the Village Squire that everybody's, in our area anyway, everybody's probably seen the plastic drinking cups from the Squire. And if you put a zip bag in it and then fold the top over the rim of the cup, then I can put a 2-cup serving into that baggie and fold the lid back up, seal it up, and get most of the air out. So now when you lay it flat on the counter, sealed, in that soup or stew or mashed potato, and you flatten it out, it is now like you can stack them in your fridge like a plate. Because it's flat like this. It's just because the soup, I mean, it's, if you let it in the bag is what's containing it. So it will level out and be flat. And it's 2 cups is only this thick, quarter inch, a half inch thick. So now you can literally stack 10 bags of soup in your freezer like little plates. In the same with, pasta sauces, pizza sauces, your mashed potatoes. I mean, obviously they don't just ooze to the side. In mashed potatoes, the trick I found to freezing them is to make them a little bit more liquidy. So I reserve some of the water that was cooked in them.
Okay.
That I can, once I mash them, I can add a little bit of that water to thin it out a little bit, because it freezes so that when you reheat it and that water evaporates, then you don't have mealy, gross mashed potatoes.
All right.
But you can everything when you let it go flat like that, and then you can just stack these little, my chilies, my pasta sauces, all of it is just little plates. And the same if you have chopped vegetables. So if you blanch your zucchini, and instead of putting it in one big bag, if you put it in single servings and then just kind of mush them around so they're all flat, and you've got little plates in your freezer, so they take up way less space. Because at first I was like, I just put the little baggies and everything, and it was like, well, this is a huge pain in the, there's no room for anything. And then everything's stacked together, and it's like some big giant jigsaw puzzle.
Well, there you go. Now everybody in McHenry County, Illinois,
I know you're gonna have
can go to the village squire and say, "Hey, I want one of your plastic cups."
Because I gotta freeze my food.
And they're gonna have a big run on their plastic cups. They're gonna be, what the heck is everybody coming in here for plastic cups for?
I know. So, I love it. But yeah, when you freeze stuff like that, the same with my meatballs. I will. Another trick with something like that, where obviously meatballs, even if they lay flat, there's still air in between them.
Yeah.
So with those, if you have a vacuum sealer, great, vacuum seal them. If you don't, same with like a steak or ground beef and chicken. If you don't have a vacuum sealer, if you put it in a Ziploc bag and you have a bowl of water and you dip that steak or whatever in the bag, you dip the bag into a bowl of water, and the water essentially displaces all of that air and seals around the steak, so you can slowly dip it in.
Okay.
So if you zip half of that zip bag and only leave enough little space that's unzipped for the air to escape, you can dip it in a pot of water and it pushes all the air out, just basic science. It pushes all the air out. And then once the air is out, you just zip the last bit of it. And now your steak or whatever
never would have thought of doing that.
Remotely. I love MacGyver tricks. I love
you MacGyver your steak.
I do. I MacGyver just about anything. But yeah, you can do all sorts of little tricks and tips like that to save space. But it's fantastic because, even with steak, if you chop it up in chunks, then you can pull a single serving of steak out and make fajitas in a matter of minutes versus waiting hours for something.
Now, here you say that also you cannot freeze like tuna salad or egg salad.
It's the mayonnaise.
What does mayo do in the fridge?
It splits because mayonnaise is egg-based typically, unless it's vegan. But it's typically egg-based, and it's one of those things with the consistency, like cottage cheese. You can't freeze cottage cheese because you've got the curds and then you've got the whey, and it's got liquid that freezes faster than the curds do, and it becomes mealy and gritty and gross. So there's certain things that just don't bode well for freezing, and most of them are dairy type or, predominantly water-based products.
So the same thing would happen with sour cream, I'm guessing, then, which you got listed.
Correct.
So I freaking love egg salad. I like egg salad sandwiches. I really do. I'll eat tuna salad every now and then, but only if it's like the oil-based tuna. Right. I hate tuna packed in water. It's so gross. I'm the
exact opposite.
See, and my wife loves the tuna in water too. She I don't know, she loves it, but that's her absolute preference. I way prefer the tuna in oil. It tastes so much better to me.
That mouthfeel is just. Bleh.
Oh no, it's much better.
No, gross.
No, it's good.
But yeah, I've taken to, because mayonnaise is fairly low per serving, considering it's only on average like 70 to 90 milligrams. Some of them are higher, but you can get a decent mayonnaise, low sodium, to make a salad out of. The problem is when you make a pasta salad or an egg salad, you use a lot. So it's a lot of servings in what you're making, especially if you like it really saucy.
Yeah.
Like I do. So
I agree with you there.
Yeah. So I found that if you substitute, and I know this is so overdone and cliche, but it's one of the few times I agree with it. is if you substitute a big portion of the mayonnaise with avocado, because avocado is a healthier fat. It is much lower in sodium. You get much more nutrient compounds out of it. And it is almost, once it's mashed up and blended, it's almost the exact same consistency as a mayonnaise. So it adds a nice flavor. So I will now use, a lot of times, instead of mayonnaise, I will use avocado to make my egg salad.
Doesn't it turn it green?
It does, but who cares?
That's gross, though.
Oh my gosh, it's just green.
It's green egg salad, though.
So?
That's weird.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic.
I don't like green things. I don't like green food. Well, I take it back because I ate the pickles; those were good.
Yeah.
And the peppers.
Yes.
Those were good. Now, actually, we've only got about 5 minutes left. Really, do you want to talk about tracking food real quick?
We can. I think we can fly through the basics of it anyway. So, when you track, a couple tips when you're tracking your food. First one, buy a scale. If you don't know serving sizes, after you get experienced and you've done it long enough, you can eyeball a serving size pretty damn. It's like people who bake can throw a teaspoon almost to the grain of pepper or paprika or something, or salt or whatever it is, in the palm of their hand and be pretty accurate. Once you get accustomed to it, you can do that. But until you are 100% confident in your serving sizes, and even when it's something healthy like a banana, if you're tracking your food and it says 1 banana, well, do you tend to buy smaller bananas that's actually only a half a serving, or do you buy the huge, giant, ginormous bunch of bananas that's like 4 servings in 1 banana?
I never buy a banana.
Yeah.
My wife does, though.
I eat them every day and I despise them, but
you are so brave. I got to give it to you. That's, I'm right there. I do too. I cannot stand them. And it impresses me to no end that you actually do that just because you need to.
The potassium, it really it doesn't get rid of or eliminate the sodium. The potassium just balances out the nutrients that I need so that my body can eliminate the sodium faster and easier, so I retain less water. So it is a necessary evil, in the fastest way, in the healthiest way, in the most complete way for me to get the fibers, the potassium, the nutrients, and the sugars in a balanced way that it doesn't throw off all my other stuff, is to do it through a banana. So I had one this morning, 2 seconds, get it done and over with, kind of like taking a pill that you don't want to take.
Oh man.
But so when you're tracking your food, buy a scale and use it until you're confident in what serving sizes are. Use it. You'll get pretty confident pretty quickly, but until that time, you don't need something $1 million. I have a cheapo one that I think I bought at Walmart, but you just need to. So step 2, pick a tracking system and stick to it. So if you're going to try a couple of them over a week until you find one that you can understand the app and you're familiar with it and you use it. I use MyFitnessPal. I've gone through a lot of them. It just happens to be the one that is comprehensive enough and it's easy enough for me to add and create my own recipes so I can figure out the nutritional content of the recipes within a reasonable amount of accuracy. So I prefer that. Some other apps, MyFitnessPal is the one that I use. There's Lose It, there's Fat Secret, there's Spark People. There's one called Chronometer. And then My Food Diary. There's a whole host of other ones, but those are just some that you could try out and see if you like them. The other one is be honest with yourself. So I touched on this a little bit ago. If you're going to use 3 or 4 tablespoons of butter and then tell yourself I use a serving of butter, you're doing yourself a serious disjustice by lying to yourself. You can lie to people all you want. You can lie to your spouse. You can lie to your friends. You can tell everybody that you eat perfectly and then go home in your own quiet corner and eat your bowl of ice cream with Oreos on top. Anybody wonder what I did the other night? Actually, I think it might have had Kit Kats. I don't know. Just don't judge.
We got 1 minute, 42 seconds.
So, but be honest with yourself and then pay attention to serving sizes. So in addition to being honest with yourself, pay attention. If you put oil in a pan to fry something and you pay attention to serving sizes, for the first time you ever do it, throw an actual tablespoon of oil in the pan so you know what it looks like. So then you can say, okay, that's not a tablespoon. I actually probably added 3. And just be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, just track it as you eat it. And then once you get a system down, then you can modify things. And also pay attention to the data, because a lot of the tracking sites, the data isn't always 100% accurate because they allow users to input data. So make sure that it's not just a calorie listing. Make sure that all of the nutrients are listed, that all the vitamins are listed, and that it's relatively accurate. Because once you build a database, you just keep using the same stuff and it's going to automatically select something you already used, so you've already verified it.
Yeah. So we got about 40 seconds here. Why don't you tell everybody how they can find you outside of 216thenet.com?
So outside of the radio station, 216thenet, and the YouTube channel, you can find me on my Facebook page at My LoSo Lifestyle. And I also have a YouTube channel, My LoSo Lifestyle, where I'm uploading these videos as we can. But if you can't find them, they are all uploaded on 216thenet's YouTube channel as well. So
very cool. We'll see you next week, Thursday at 11 o'clock.
Next week's Thanksgiving.
No, we won't. We won't.
So we won't see you next week. There'll be replays next week. Everybody have a fabulous holiday and eat a lot of turkey, and we'll show you what I ate after the holiday. It's fine. Gary's always here. He does cucumbers. Mushy cucumbers are not a good thing.
No, they aren't. Hey, and thank you, Nora, for watching. That's very cool.
My dad found her through Ancestry.com.
Oh, yeah? That's a relative?
Yeah.
How cool.
She lives here in town. I believe she works in the hospital, or she used to.